Self-mastery is not about discipline. It's not about control. And it's definitely not about becoming some cold, untouchable monk on a mountain. That's propaganda. That's what people sell you when they want you to stay small and exhausted. Real mastery? It's softer than you think. It's weirder than you've been told. It looks less like a warrior and more like water. Formless, adaptive, impossible to break. I've seen men with iron wills crumble under pressure, and I've seen the gentlest souls hold entire armies together with nothing but presence. If you think strength means hardening yourself, you've already lost. But if you're ready to unlearn everything you thought mastery was, I'll show you how to become someone no one, including yourself, can defeat. You're watching this because somewhere inside you, there's a war happening. Maybe it's the voice that says you're not disciplined enough. Maybe it's the exhaustion of trying to hold everything together. Maybe it's the quiet terror that even when you win, you still don't feel free. I know that war. I've lived it. I've watched thousands of people live it. And I'm here to tell you something that might sound strange at first, but stay with me, because this changes everything. Here's the truth nobody tells you. You've been lied to about what mastery actually is. The world sold you discipline as armor, productivity as proof of worth, control as strength. And so you've been trying to master yourself the way you'd conquer an enemy, with force, with rigid rules, with relentless pressure. You wake up every morning and you go to war with yourself. You fight your tiredness. You fight your doubts. You fight your need for rest, for softness, for simply being human. And you think this is what it means to be strong. But here's the paradox, and this is what I need you to really hear. The harder you fight yourself, the weaker you become. Every single day that you treat yourself like the enemy, you fracture a little more. You deplete yourself a little more. And eventually, you reach a point where even your victories feel hollow because you've won them at the cost of your own humanity. This video isn't about giving you another system. I'm not here to sell you a morning routine or a productivity hack or some new form of discipline that's going to fix everything if you just try harder. I'm here to show you why every system you've tried has left you more fractured than before. I'm here to teach you the same philosophy that allowed me to win wars without fighting, to lead without forcing, to become unshakable not by hardening, but by learning how to flow. This is the difference, and this is why what I'm about to share with you is so different from everything else you've heard. Common advice tells you to discipline your weakness. I'm going to show you how to befriend it. Common advice tells you to control your emotions. I'm going to show you how to move with them. Common advice tells you that if you're struggling, you need to push harder. I'm going to show you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop pushing entirely. Because the person who knows how to be soft and sharp, yielding and immovable, adaptive and grounded, that person cannot be defeated. Not by circumstances, not by other people, and most importantly, not by themselves. If you stay with me for the next hour or so, you'll walk away with a way of seeing yourself that makes most of your struggles dissolve. Not because life gets easier, but because you become fluid. And when you're fluid, you can move through anything. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the war you didn't know you were fighting. I want to tell you about a general I once knew. His name doesn't matter. What matters is what happened to him, because I see the same thing happening to you right now. This general was the kind of man people wrote legends about. Disciplined, strategic, untouchable in battle. He trained his soldiers with precision. He led with unwavering authority. He never, and I mean never, showed weakness. To his men, he was invincible. To himself, he was a fortress. Walls so high, so thick, that nothing could get in. Nothing could hurt him. Nothing could shake him. But fortresses have a problem. They're rigid. They don't bend. They don't move. They stand there, solid and unmovable. And they tell themselves that this immovability is strength. And when you're standing in calm weather, when everything is going according to plan, that rigidity looks impressive. It looks powerful. But rigid things, when pressured long enough, when tested by forces they can't control, they don't bend. They shatter. One season, this general's army faced a campaign that stretched on longer than expected. Resources thinned. Supply lines were cut. Morale began to waver. And this general, so used to controlling every variable, so used to bending reality to his will through sheer force of discipline, found himself in a situation he couldn't master through willpower alone. The weather didn't cooperate. The enemy adapted faster than anticipated. His own soldiers started showing cracks. And what did he do? He pushed harder. He slept less. He demanded more of himself and more of his men. He tightened his grip. He fortified his walls. He told himself that if he could just maintain control, if he could just stay disciplined enough, strong enough, unyielding enough, everything would work out. Because that's what he'd always done. That's what had always worked. But this time, it didn't work. And one morning, he couldn't get out of bed. Not because he was injured. Not because he was sick in the way you'd normally think of sickness, but because something inside him, some core, weight-bearing beam that had been holding up the entire structure of who he was, had finally given out. He had broken himself. When I visited him, I expected to find a man defeated by external circumstances. I expected to find someone angry at the enemy, frustrated with his soldiers, bitter about the weather or the terrain or the lack of resources. Instead, I found a man defeated by himself. He looked at me, and his eyes were empty in a way that scared me. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, "I have become my own cruelest opponent. I have fought myself into collapse." Sitting there with him, I realized something. This wasn't just his story. This is the story of almost everyone I've ever met. You, right now, listening to this, you're doing the same thing. Maybe not as dramatically. Maybe you haven't collapsed yet. But you're on the same path. You're treating yourself like a fortress that needs to withstand every storm without bending. You're treating yourself like an enemy that needs to be controlled, dominated, disciplined into submission. And every single day, you're laying bricks in a prison you call strength. Here's what I told him, and what I need you to hear right now, because this is the most important thing I can say to you. The war you're losing isn't against your circumstances. It's not against your job, your relationships, your responsibilities, your lack of time or resources. The war you're losing is against the version of strength you've been performing. You've been taught that mastery means eliminating your humanity. That to be strong, you must never waver, never doubt, never soften, never need anything, never be anything less than perfect, controlled, disciplined, unshakable. But that's not mastery. That's self-betrayal. True mastery is knowing when to be stone and when to be water. And most of you have forgotten how to be water. You've spent so long trying to be unbreakable that you've made yourself brittle. And brittle things break. They always break. Let me tell you about bamboo. There's a reason bamboo survives storms that destroy oak trees, and it's not because bamboo is stronger. Objectively, it's not. An oak tree is massive, solid, rooted deep in the earth. It's been standing for decades, maybe centuries. It looks like the definition of strength. But when the storm comes, when the wind reaches a certain force, the oak tree has only one strategy: resistance. It stands firm. It fights. It refuses to yield. And if the wind is strong enough, if the pressure is relentless enough, the oak tree snaps. The trunk splits. The roots tear from the earth. And this thing that looked so powerful, so permanent, so strong, is destroyed. But the bamboo? The bamboo does something that looks like weakness. When the wind comes, it bends. It bends so low that it nearly touches the ground. If you were watching from a distance, you'd think the bamboo was being defeated. You'd think it was about to break. It looks vulnerable. It looks like it's surrendering. And then, when the wind passes, when the storm moves on, the bamboo rises again. Slowly, steadily, unchanged, unbroken, exactly as it was before, ready to face the next storm. You are not an oak. Stop trying to be. I know that's hard to hear because everything in our culture, everything you've been taught, tells you that the oak is the goal. Be solid. Be immovable. Never bend. Never show that you're affected. Stand your ground no matter what. But I'm telling you, as someone who has survived more storms than I can count, as someone who has seen what happens to people who refuse to bend, that strategy will destroy you. Most of the pain you're carrying right now isn't from life being hard. Life is hard for everyone. Storms come for everyone. The pain you're carrying is from you refusing to bend. You've convinced yourself that yielding is weakness, that adaptability is failure, that if you soften even slightly, if you let your guard down for even a moment, you'll collapse entirely. You'll be exposed. You'll be vulnerable. People will see that you're not actually as strong as you pretend to be, and then everything will fall apart. But here's the paradox, and this is where everything shifts. The more rigid you become, the easier you are to break. The more you resist, the more energy you waste. The harder you try to control everything, the less control you actually have. I've watched warriors train themselves into stone, convince themselves that being emotionless and unaffected is the ultimate form of strength, only to shatter at the first real pressure that they couldn't prepare for. And I've watched soft-spoken strategists, people who everyone underestimated, people who looked gentle and accommodating and flexible, move through chaos like water through cracks. Unstoppable, not because they were hard, but because they were adaptive. Mastery isn't about becoming unbreakable. It's about becoming unsnappable. It's about building a self that can bend, absorb, shift, and return to center no matter what comes. And the first step to doing that, the very first step, is to stop treating yourself like the enemy. I want you to try something with me right now. Close your eyes for a moment. Well, not literally, you're watching this, but imagine with me. Imagine yourself 10 years from now. You've kept going the way you're going, kept pushing, kept grinding, kept treating rest as weakness and softness as failure, kept waking up exhausted and fighting through it, kept ignoring what your body needs, what your heart needs, what your soul needs, because you've got goals to hit and standards to maintain and an image to uphold. What does that version of you look like? Really see it. See the exhaustion in their eyes. See the tension they carry in their shoulders, their jaw, their chest. See how they've learned to smile while dying inside. See how they've mastered the art of looking fine while feeling empty. That version of you, the one who kept choosing rigidity over fluidity, control over collaboration, force over flow, what have they gained? And more importantly, what have they lost? Now imagine a different path. Imagine that instead of hardening, you learn to flow. Instead of fighting yourself, you learn to move with yourself. Instead of treating your needs as weaknesses to overcome, you learn to see them as information to work with. Instead of collapsing under pressure, you learn to bend and rise. What does that version of you look like? How does that version of you feel? What becomes possible when you're no longer spending half your energy fighting an internal war? Which version of you is more powerful? Which version is more free? Which version can actually sustain the life you're trying to build? The truth is, you already know the answer. You can feel it. The version of mastery you've been chasing is exhausting you. It's costing you more than you want to admit. And some part of you knows that if you keep going this way, you won't master yourself. You'll just become a stranger to yourself. You'll become someone who's very good at performing strength while feeling hollow inside. I'm not here to give you another productivity hack. I'm not here to teach you how to optimize your morning routine or structure your day or set better goals. I'm here to give you permission to stop breaking yourself in the name of becoming better. Because real growth, real mastery, real strength, it doesn't come from violence against yourself. It comes from collaboration with yourself. Let's talk about the enemy you can't see. This is the hardest truth, and I need you to stay with me because your mind is going to want to reject this. You have been at war with yourself, and you didn't even know it. Every time you force yourself to push through exhaustion when your body is screaming for rest, you're fighting you. Every time you shame yourself for not being further along, for not being more disciplined, for not being as successful or productive or put together as someone else, you're fighting you. Every time you ignore your needs in the name of discipline, you're fighting you. And here's the problem with this war. When you fight yourself, you always lose. Even when you win, you lose. Let me explain what I mean. You set a goal. You push yourself relentlessly. You override every signal your body gives you. You ignore your exhaustion, your stress, your emotional needs. You grind. And maybe you hit the goal. Maybe you finish the project. Get the promotion. Reach the milestone. Prove your worth. And for a moment, it feels good. For a moment, you feel like the discipline paid off. But then what happens? You're exhausted. You're depleted. You've reinforced the belief that you are only valuable when you override your humanity. You've taught yourself that your needs don't matter, that your limits are weaknesses, that the only way to succeed is to treat yourself like a machine that should perform regardless of how it feels. And so the next time you set a goal, you repeat the same pattern. Push harder. Ignore more. Override everything. And the cycle continues until something breaks. True mastery begins when you stop seeing yourself as the problem. You are not lazy. You're under-resourced. You are not weak. You're overextended. You are not broken. You have been taught to measure yourself against standards that were designed to break you. Standards created by a culture that profits from your exhaustion, that needs you to feel inadequate so you'll keep consuming, keep striving, keep pushing, keep buying the next solution that promises to finally make you enough. The first act of mastery is this: make peace with yourself, not in a soft, fluffy way, not in an it's okay to give up way, but in a strategic, ruthlessly effective way. Because here's what I learned on the battlefield, and here's what applies to your life right now. A general who is at war with their own army will never win a battle. If your soldiers don't trust you, if they're exhausted and under-resourced and being pushed beyond their limits without care for their well-being, they will eventually mutiny or collapse or simply stop performing. The same is true for you. Your body is not your enemy. Your emotions are not your enemy. Your need for rest is not your enemy. Your desire for connection, for joy, for ease. These are not weaknesses to overcome. They are information. They are signals. They are your allies trying to tell you what you need to function at your highest level, and you've been treating them like insurgents that need to be crushed. Stop. Listen. Collaborate. What if instead of fighting your tiredness, you asked it what it's trying to tell you? What if instead of shaming yourself for your resistance, you got curious about what it's protecting you from? What if instead of forcing yourself through every moment of discomfort, you pause to assess whether this is discomfort that leads to growth or discomfort that leads to breakdown? Mastery is discernment. It's knowing the difference between the discomfort of expansion and the discomfort of self-destruction. And most people never develop that discernment because they're too busy forcing themselves through everything with the same blunt instrument of discipline. Here's the paradox that breaks most people, and I need you to really sit with this, because it's going to challenge everything you think you know about strength. The strongest position is also the most flexible. Think about it. In battle, the most dangerous opponent isn't the one who holds their ground no matter what. It's not the one who never retreats, never pivots, never adapts. That opponent is predictable. That opponent can be worn down, outsmarted, maneuvered around. The most dangerous opponent is the one who can shift, adapt, feint, and reposition faster than you can predict. The one who seems to be everywhere and nowhere at once. The one who knows when to advance and when to retreat, when to engage and when to conserve energy, when to strike and when to wait. The same is true for you. If your identity is rigid, if you've locked yourself into being, I am disciplined, I am strong, I never quit, then any situation that requires you to rest, pivot, or soften will feel like defeat. You'll fight reality itself to maintain the image. You'll exhaust yourself trying to be consistent with a version of yourself that doesn't serve the moment you're in. And reality always wins. You can't discipline your way out of needing rest. You can't willpower your way out of burnout. You can't force your way through situations that require gentleness. But if your identity is fluid, if you've learned to say, I respond to what is needed, I adapt without losing myself, I am whole enough to hold contradictions, then you become nearly impossible to destabilize. You become someone who can be soft when softness serves, firm when firmness serves, active when action serves, still when stillness serves. You're not locked into one strategy. You're not trapped by your own image. You're free to be what the moment needs. This is the essence of water philosophy, and I want you to really understand what I mean by this, because it's not about being passive or weak or formless in a way that has no substance. Water doesn't fight the shape of the container. It becomes the container. And in doing so, it can go anywhere, survive anything, and erode even the hardest stone over time. Put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. Put water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. Put water in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. But it's still water. It hasn't lost its essence. It's just adapted its form to the reality it's in. Most of you are trying to be stone, trying to be unmoved, unshakable, unchanging. You think that if you can just establish yourself as one solid thing, one reliable identity, one consistent way of being, you'll be safe, you'll be strong. But stone breaks, stone erodes, stone gets weathered and cracked, and eventually crumbles. Water endures. Water adapts. Water flows around obstacles instead of breaking against them. Water finds a way through. Always. Mastery is not about becoming hard. It's about becoming unholdable. It's about developing a self that's so fluid, so adaptive, so responsive to reality that nothing can pin you down, break you apart, or force you into a shape that doesn't serve you. And that requires letting go of the rigid version of yourself that you've been clinging to like a life raft. I know that's scary. I know it feels like if you let go of that rigidity, you'll fall apart completely. But that's not what happens. What happens is you become more yourself, not less. You become more capable, not less. You become stronger in the ways that actually matter, not weaker. Now let me tell you something that's going to sting, but you need to hear it. You don't control anything. Or at least, you control almost nothing. You don't control what happens. You don't control how others respond. You don't control the economy, the weather, the traffic, whether your work gets recognized, whether your effort pays off the way you hope it will. You don't even fully control your own emotions or thoughts. They arise. They come and go like weather patterns. You can influence them, sure, but you can't command them into existence or force them away. And most of your suffering, most of the exhaustion you feel, comes from pretending you have more control than you do. You exhaust yourself trying to manage every outcome. You panic when things don't go according to plan. You collapse under the weight of responsibility for things that were never yours to carry. You lie awake at night, running through scenarios, trying to prepare for every possibility, trying to control variables that are fundamentally uncontrollable. But here's the reframe that changes everything. If you can't control it, you don't have to carry it. Read that again. If you can't control it, you don't have to carry it. Your job is not to control the river. Your job is to learn how to navigate it. And the moment you stop trying to force the current to go your way, you suddenly have all your energy back to actually move skillfully through it. This is what I mean by mastery. Not dominating reality, but dancing with it. It's developing the wisdom to know what you can influence and what you need to accept. It's learning to put your energy where it actually makes a difference instead of exhausting yourself fighting battles you cannot win. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control the uncontrollable, and they die exhausted and bitter, wondering why their effort never seemed to be enough. It's not that their effort wasn't enough. It's that they were directing it at the wrong targets. Let's talk about discipline, because this is where most people have been completely misled, and it's causing so much unnecessary suffering. You think discipline means forcing yourself to do hard things, ignoring discomfort, overriding resistance, grinding through no matter what. And sure, sometimes that works. Sometimes you need to do the thing even when you don't feel like it. I'm not saying every day should be comfortable or easy, but more often, this approach just trains you to distrust yourself. Here's what happens. You set a standard. You decide you're going to wake up at 5 a.m. every day, or work out for an hour, or write 1,000 words, or whatever the metric is, and then you fail to meet it. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you're sick. Maybe life threw you a curveball. But instead of adjusting, instead of being curious about why you're struggling, you shame yourself. You tell yourself you're weak, lazy, undisciplined. You try harder. You force yourself. And maybe you succeed for a few days, but then you fail again, and shame again. And the cycle continues until discipline stops being a tool for growth and becomes a weapon you use against yourself. Real discipline is not about force. It's about alignment. It's asking, what do I actually need right now? What is my body telling me? What is my resistance trying to protect? And then, and this is key, you make a choice that honors both your goals and your humanity. Sometimes that means pushing through. Sometimes that means resting. Sometimes that means pivoting entirely. But it's always rooted in listening, not dominating. Discipline without self-compassion is just self-harm with better PR. It's violence dressed up as virtue. And I need you to see that, because so many of you are hurting yourselves in the name of being better. And you think that hurt is proof that you're doing it right. It's not. Sustainable growth doesn't come from violence. It comes from partnership. It comes from working with yourself, not against yourself. Here's the most counterintuitive truth I can give you. And this is the one that most people reject because it sounds like giving up. Sometimes the most powerful move is to stop fighting. Not because you're weak, not because you're giving up, but because you're wise enough to recognize when force will only make things worse. I've seen armies win wars by retreating at the right moment. I've seen leaders gain respect by admitting uncertainty instead of pretending to have all the answers. I've seen individuals transform their entire lives by finally letting go of the version of themselves they thought they had to be. Surrender is not collapse. Surrender is strategy. It's saying, this approach isn't working. I'm going to stop pouring energy into it and try something else. It's releasing the grip on outcomes you can't control so you can focus on the actions you can take. It's recognizing that sometimes the obstacle isn't something to overcome, but something to go around, or wait out, or leave entirely. Most people are so terrified of surrender that they'll cling to failing strategies for years, decades even, just to avoid the feeling of losing. They'll stay in relationships that are destroying them. They'll keep pursuing goals that no longer align with who they've become. They'll maintain identities that feel like prisons, all because surrendering feels like failure. But the real loss is the time, energy, and peace you sacrifice in the name of stubbornness. The real failure is living a life you don't actually want because you're too afraid to admit that the path you're on isn't serving you. Mastery is knowing when to hold on and when to let go. And the people who can do both, who can commit fully when commitment serves and release completely when release serves, they're unstoppable. Because they're not wasting energy on battles that don't matter. They're not pouring themselves into black holes. They're strategic. They're fluid. They're wise. So how do you actually do this? How do you take everything I've said and turn it into a life that feels different? Let me give you 3 practices. They're simple. They're grounded. And if you do them consistently, they will fundamentally change your relationship with yourself. Practice 1. The morning question. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you start your routine, before you do anything else, ask yourself one question. What does my body need today to feel resourced? Not what do I need to accomplish? Not what should I do? Not what would make me a good person or a disciplined person or a successful person, but what do I need? What does my actual body, my actual nervous system, my actual heart need today to feel resourced, to feel capable of meeting what's ahead? And then listen, really listen. Maybe it's movement. Maybe it's rest. Maybe it's connection or silence or play or nourishment or touch or creativity. The answer will be different every day, and your job is not to override it. Your job is not to judge it. Your job is to honor it, even in small ways. Even if you can't give yourself everything you need, can you give yourself something? This is not indulgence. This is strategic self-care, because a resourced version of you is 10 times more effective than an exhausted version of you pretending to be fine. A version of you that's actually rested, actually nourished, actually connected to what you need is going to show up so much more powerfully than a version of you that's white-knuckling through every moment. Start here. One question, one honest answer, one small action that honors it. Do this every day for a month and watch what happens. Watch how much more energy you have. Watch how much clearer your thinking becomes. Watch how much more easeful your life starts to feel. Not because the circumstances changed, but because you stopped fighting yourself. Practice 2. The bamboo check-in. Throughout your day, multiple times a day, pause and ask, am I being oak or bamboo right now? Am I resisting something that I'd be better off yielding to? Am I forcing a solution when flexibility would serve me more? Am I holding tension that doesn't need to be held? Am I standing rigid when I could be bending? If you notice rigidity, if you notice yourself clenching, physically, mentally, emotionally, take a breath. Soften your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Unclench your hands. And imagine yourself bending like bamboo in wind. Not collapsing, not giving up, just yielding, just allowing, just moving with what is instead of against it. This sounds simple, but it's profound, because every time you practice softening without collapsing, you're rewiring the belief that strength requires hardness. You're teaching your nervous system that you can be flexible and still be safe. You can yield and still maintain your integrity. You can adapt and still be yourself. Over time, this becomes automatic. You become someone who naturally flows instead of someone who naturally resists, and that changes everything. Practice 3. The end-of-day inventory. Before bed, before you go to sleep, reflect on your day with 2 questions. Where did I fight myself today? And where did I move with myself today? Where did you override your needs, shame yourself, or force something that didn't need forcing? And where did you listen, adapt, or honor what you needed? Don't judge the answers. Don't make them mean anything about your worth. Just notice them. Just gather the data. Over time, this practice builds awareness, and awareness is the foundation of all change. You'll start to see patterns. You'll notice that you always override yourself in certain situations. You'll catch yourself mid-rigidity and be able to make a different choice. You'll start to see the moments where you moved with yourself and how much better those moments felt. All 3 of these practices point to the same core shift. Stop treating yourself like the enemy. Start treating yourself like the most important ally you'll ever have. Because that's what you are. You're not something to be dominated, controlled, or fixed. You're something to be collaborated with. You're someone to be partnered with. And when you make that shift, when you stop fighting you, everything becomes easier. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop wasting energy on an unwinnable war. I want to come back to something I said at the beginning, because I think it's the key to everything. You are not broken. You are not the enemy. You are the ally you've been waiting for. Most of you have been waiting for someone else to come along and save you, validate you, see you, choose you. You've been waiting for the right circumstance, the right opportunity, the right moment when everything finally clicks into place. But what if the person you've been waiting for is you? What if the partnership you've been craving is the one you can have with yourself? What if instead of waking up every day and immediately going to war with your body, your mind, your emotions, your circumstances, you woke up and asked, "How can we work together today?" What if instead of forcing yourself through every moment, you collaborated with yourself? What if you treated yourself with the same patience, compassion, and understanding you'd offer a dear friend who was struggling? I know this sounds soft. I know it sounds like it won't get results. But I'm telling you, from decades of experience, from watching thousands of people try both approaches, the people who learn to work with themselves always outlast, outperform, and outpeace the people who are constantly at war with themselves. The ones who fight themselves might have brief bursts of impressive output, but they burn out. They break down. They hit walls they can't push through. But the ones who flow, who adapt, who treat themselves like allies, they're in it for the long game. They build lives that are sustainable. They create success that doesn't cost them their soul. You've been taught that the path to mastery is through suffering, through proving yourself, through earning your worth. But what if mastery is actually about coming home to yourself? What if it's about finally stopping the war and learning to live in peace with who you actually are, not who you think you should be, not who you wish you were, but who you actually are right now, with all your needs and limits and humanity intact? That version of you, the one that knows how to bend without breaking, that version is invincible. The version of you that can listen to yourself without judgment, that version is unstoppable. The version of you that moves with life instead of against it, that version wins every time. Not because they never face challenges, not because life becomes easy, but because they're not also fighting themselves while they navigate everything else. Here's what I want you to remember. Write this down. Tattoo it on your brain. Whatever you need to do to make this stick, you are not broken. You are not the enemy. You are the ally you've been waiting for. Stop fighting you. Start moving with you. That's the whole game. That's the secret. That's the thing that changes everything. And if this resonated, if something in this video cracked something open, made you see yourself differently, gave you even a sliver of relief, do me a favor. Hit the like button. Leave a comment about which lesson landed hardest for you. Was it the bamboo metaphor? Was it the idea that discipline without compassion is violence? Was it the realization that you've been at war with yourself? Tell me. I want to know. And subscribe if you want more of this kind of thing, because I'm not going anywhere. I have more to say about how to actually live, how to be human in a way that doesn't destroy you, how to build a life that's both powerful and peaceful. But more than that, more than any of that, go be soft and strong. Go be bamboo in the storm. Go master yourself not by dominating, but by finally coming home to yourself. You've got this. You've always had this. You just forgot for a while that strength could look like softness, that power could feel like peace, that mastery could come from partnership instead of war. I'll see you in the next one.